Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Sara de Clercq, and today I'd like to share a little bit of insights of how do we work with people, particularly with NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, which very simply put is the study of subjectivity. And we work with semantic dynamic distortions. And what that means is that there are several distortions in language that we can hear and detect and work with as practitioners to support people in creating a more holistic view. So including more parts of the whole, both of the external world, but also of their inside reality, which ultimately means that they have more flexibility in themselves to see things and perceive things, both in themselves and then outside in the world, in more diverse ways. Now, why is that important? Because the more flexible we can be in our own selves, in our own viewing, in our own perspective taking, the more resilient we are. It's that simple. And the more fluid and flexible we can move through life, which makes naturally life more effortless and easeful. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk through 11 semantic distortions that we've defined, and also from NLP research over the years and years and years, as to what we hear in language and what we want to detect. And the reason I want to share this with you is because you can, in your own time, start to see these semantic distortions in your own language, whether you say them out loud to someone else. So when you're talking or in conversation with a friend or a colleague or a family member, and you're actually speaking, you can hear yourself speak and hear these semantic distortions. Or when you're by yourself, you might be in the shower, you're cooking a dinner, whatever, there's no one else around, and there's a voice inside of our head constantly talking. Have you noticed that? There's this voice that's constantly talking, yeah? And we can hear the distortions in that voice as well. Even if there's no one around, we can hear our own talking. And the more we can hear our own talking, the self-awareness we have around that, with like a gentle, effortless viewing, yeah? It's not sort of like, let's look at all these thoughts and focus on them, which creates more friction in the system, because the more we focus on it, the more it actually starts to become alive, and it becomes this real turbulent thing that sometimes can happen. It's more of a gentle witnessing and an effortless, gentle witnessing as certain thoughts and perspectives are arising. And any thought, any perspective that is arising is simply energy emotion. So we speak to emotions in the body, so emotions, as energy in motion. Yeah, same as the wind flowing through the air and the waves rolling through the water. So waves in the ocean, or rolling hills and grass that is moving in the air. All of that is energy emotion. Nature is energy emotion. A plant that is growing, an animal that is a fish that's swimming through the sea. Yeah, all of that is energy emotion. We are energy in motion. These hands now, this is all energy emotion. Yeah. And feelings, so energy emotions, feelings in the body, but also thoughts are energy in motion. They have a different shape, they have a different quality to them, yet they're energy in motion, and they're subtle energies in motion. So thoughts is not something other people can't necessarily see our thoughts. So it means they're subtle. Yeah, this hand is gross, like I can touch it. Is what we call gross reality, relative reality. We can see it and touch it. Subtle to energy emotions is not something we can necessarily touch or see. So it's a subtle perspective, and it's ours. Yeah. So we're going to talk to these semantic distortions on these subtle perspectives, on these energies in motion in real time, and how you can start to learn and detect both in yourself and in other people with permission, but mainly in yourself. That's what we're here for, to really start to see some of these semantic distortions. So I'm just going to bring them up in a moment. So we're going to go through these 11 semantic distortions to bring awareness to you in real time. The first one is projected referential index. So we use pronouns, and you can hear it in my language. We use pronouns, which is an example of that. You, we, us, when referencing self. So, for example, the way we can hear that, particularly in retreat settings, but also in one-on-one coaching settings, is where someone says, you feel really terrible in these kind of situations. You know how everyone is, yeah, X, Y, Z. I was like, oh, well, you or me? That's true for you, it sounds like. And it's really important to really get into the habit of start referencing the self. So that can either be through the pronoun, using the pronoun of I see it this way, I feel like this. This feeling is arising in me in response to this. So nothing outside of us can cause us to feel something internally. We have an internal experience of that, and it's really healthy to take responsibility of that. And the way we can recognize that in language in very subtle ways is where we don't say I, we actually say you or we or us. So it's a way to kind of move the responsibility away from us. You know how we all feel X, Y, Z. So really the way to back to that is referencing your own experience or saying, this is what is arising for me, or using the word I. With that, just coming back to that, with that, you actually have the opportunity to now take ownership of it, which is really healthy for any change to occur in ourselves, for any perspectival change or shift in energy or any change in ourselves. We need to feel first that we actually have responsibility and power to change it. If we feel like it's out of our control and it's just happening to us, we don't actually feel empowered to change something. So we need to feel that it is ours and that we actually can change it. It's a very important part of development to actually start to really see, this is my projection, this is my thought, this is my perspective. And then one step further, we go, well, it's not actually yours, but for now, let's really take some ownership. The second one is all or nothing thinking. So this is so these are polarities of mind, dualistic thinking structures, black and white thinking. So either or thinking. It's either this or that. You are either in a relationship or you're not. You're either working or you're not. Or you're on holiday. Yeah. I'm either for it or against it. I'm either with you or not with you. So it's kind of like this very black and white dualistic way of thinking, as opposed to having a bit more of a gray area. It's supposed to actually, okay, maybe there's something else possible here. What is another way of looking at this? And sometimes it can, when we have this perspective, I'm either going for it or I'm not. For example, in the work context, I'm like go hard or go home. Those sort of phrases is an example of black and white distortion. So all or nothing thinking. You're either in or you're out. It's very binary. Yeah, which sometimes is useful. We just want to bring awareness to it and see, okay, so in some contexts it might actually be useful to have a very binary perspective on things, and in some contexts it's not. It's not useful. Yeah, so we want to bring nuance and awareness to it. In which context is it not useful, and are we allowed as humans to change our minds and to see life more as a process and as more spectrum, where we can move a bit more fluidly. It allows for so much more flexibility in the system, in the body, in the mind, in everything, to allow for this more flexible way of operating and looking at things. Now, the third distortion is mind reading. What this is projecting meanings, which is thoughts, feelings, intent, etc., onto others without a communication loop. So what this means is that I have a perspective or a thought that this is probably what the other person is thinking, without me actually checking in with them. Is this what's going on for you? Is this what you're thinking? And now, again, it is okay to sometimes, it's also what makes us human and makes us relate. If we have some level of understanding what's going on for someone. Yeah, so some level, okay, this may or may not be going on, with the willingness to be wrong about it. Because we need to be in a communication loop to actually check in. Is this actually what's going on for you? Is this actually what's alive for you here? When you say X, Y, Z, or when you do this particular facial expression, how often do we misinterpret people based on their facial expression? Or we can check in with certain language. When someone says, I really value honesty, it's like, okay, honesty, what do you mean by honesty? And then they go on and describe, this is what I mean by honesty, this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like, this is what it feels like. And it might be different than your perspective on honesty. I feel really stressed, I feel anxious. okay, let's check in here. What is stress? What is that like for you? It might be very different to what it's like for me or for someone else. And we have these anxiety, stress, depression, all these, particularly those labels and concepts is what I like to really pull apart with people, because that's where for a lot of people, a lot of friction sits. But also in the workplace, I think we should really hurry with this project. Okay, when you say we think that we should really hurry with it, what do you mean specifically? And what are you talking about? Instead of, okay, but we need to hurry. And I know exactly what you mean by that. Yeah, and there's a healthy level of understanding other people and having some level of empathetic capacity to be able to read into people's mind a little bit, mind reading, with the willingness to be wrong. And if we don't check in often enough, it's very likely that our communication loop somewhere is broken and that we somewhere misinterpret one another. So it's really important to keep checking in with one another. Is this really what you mean? Can I just check in with you? Is this really what you mean? My understanding and perception of anxiety is this and this and this, because this is the experience that I've had with it, or this is the people that I've seen with that. So this is my reference point. What is yours? We go through so many experiences in life, all of us, so many different experiences. There is no way that we're going to see the same way. There's absolutely no chance. It is actually a miracle that we even are able to communicate and exist somewhat harmoniously on the planet. It's actually a genuine miracle. If you really start to think back of how different all of our experiences are, how different our interpretation of those experiences are, how we all live in such a completely different reality. So keep this in mind when you communicate with someone else. Is this really what's going on for them? Well, we don't actually know until we check in. So this is the fourth one, quadrant pathologies. So creation of generalized, unchecked, again, assumptions that operate outside of awareness in service of self. So it is often personalized. So you see that as well. So experiences are personalized. So we take things personally. And it's generalized, yeah? So there's a generalization of an assumption of a thing or a project or a comment to be perceived in a particular way, and it's in service of self. So someone might say something and there's an assumption. So there's a quadrant pathology. I won't go into what quadrants are right now, but it's basically, are we referencing ourselves or are we referencing others? And we do an unchecked assumption. Do you want me to do something with this now? Let's say, give an example. Someone comes to us at work and says, oh, there's so many projects to do. I really need to still finish this project before Friday. And I've got X, Y, Z module to still finish before Friday. If I'm in the doing space, which is one of the quadrants, this was a default for me personally. I go immediately into, okay, what can I do for you with that? So I go immediately into, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. What do you want me to do with that? As opposed to actually checking in, thank you for sharing. Is there a particular reason you're sharing this with me? Do you want support or do you simply want to share? Yeah. So we want to check in. Is this really, what does someone want with their share? Basically, we're basically checking in. How can I respond best here? How can I actually be of service to you as opposed to of service in myself in an unconscious way? Yeah. So, and I thought by saying, okay, what do you want me to do with this? That I was in service of them. But I was in service of myself, because it was a biased perspective that if someone comes to me with a problem, quote unquote problem, that I need to do something with that. Okay, you're coming to me with a problem, so I probably need to do something with that. That was my assumption, but that's probably not the case. Not always. Sometimes someone just wants to share what's going on for them in their life. Yeah, so we always want to check in, and is it really in service of the other, or is it actually in a sort of a sneaky, distorted way in service of ourselves? So we really want to get a sense and just check in on them. Now, this is a fun one, shadow projection. You might have heard of this one. So shadow projection often had to do with some negativity or fault or accusing or blaming, but the next one is going to be golden shadow, so these two are linked to one another, 5 and 6. So this one, shadow projection, looking to reality, including other people, for faults, accusing and blaming. So we're seeing something in reality. This could also be systems at large or the government or things out there that are not good. We're looking for fault or something to blame. This could also be other people, colleagues, friends, again, family members, children, just something that is in them that they have done that is a fault. And we're accusing and blaming them of that. And this is where it can particularly get tricky when we go back to the point, what was it? Mind reading and then shadow projection. It can get quite dynamic, yeah? Are we mind reading or are we projecting our shadow? And we want to get really clear. Shadow projection often get recognized in a way where we feel some level of energy in our own system around it. So frustration, annoyance, this person always is so late, whatever. Yeah, whatever the frame might be, or this person is really selfish. Okay, interesting. If I have a sense of that person is always really selfish, and listen to the word always, that's a generalization. So it's shadow projection, but we can get more subtle than this, but for now it tends to be more generalized. The whole government or the whole of the US. Yeah, so it's more generalized. And yeah, we see some sort of fault of blaming it. And it's like, okay, if I see her as selfish always, where is that actually living inside of me? So shadow projection, the way we can work with that is really the moment we notice ourselves doing that, we can come back to ourselves. Okay, interesting. How is this actually living in me? How am I either living this myself? So I'm actually really selfish myself, potentially. Yeah. Or how am I not allowing myself to be that way? So I'm constantly just giving to others and I'm not actually creating space for self. And of course, it is important to have space for self and to have space for others in a healthy, dynamic, balanced way. Yeah. So we're kind of looking, where are we accusing other people and blaming other people for particular behaviors, traits, anything that we might see, and how is that actually living inside of us? Because the only reason we can see it in another is because it lives in us in some way. And then we're going to go to golden shadow projection, which is the same idea, but it actually is an over idealization. So it's some sort of projection onto someone else or something else. So reality, including others in it, where we actually over-idealize. So we project positive, quote unquote, positive traits onto other people. This person is such a good public speaker. I wish I had that level of charisma, for example. Oh, well, in order for you to be able to see that, it needs to live inside of you. It's the same with the other. Yeah, in this case, it just tends to be the more positive qualities. And of course, we know there's no such thing as positive and negative, but for now, we're just looking at it through those frames to make it clear and have an understanding what we're working with here. So the moment you see a positive quality, an over-idealization, think of the classic guru syndrome, or teachers or parents or certain friends where we look up to, it needs to live inside of us. There's no other way. That if we see that in someone else, it needs to be present in us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see that. And so then we can also start to bring those positive qualities back into ourselves, take ownership of them, and actually start living ourselves from that place, which is a quality of actualization, of empowerment. Yeah. The golden shadow piece is particularly very important if we're doing any awakening work or any cleaning up work or any therapy kind of work, because we project our negative qualities. In other words, in our own self system, we've turned away from those qualities and projected onto someone else because we don't actually want to deal with inside of ourselves. So both of these, particularly 5 and 6, are very important distortions that we want to be aware of. And it's very easy to recognize in our language and in our somatic system, which is any form that something or someone out there has a particular quality or trait that we either admire, so we either like it or we don't like it. It's a very simple way of looking at it. So if you hear yourself saying the words like or dislike, there it is. Yeah. Point 7, external causality. So looking for causality of emotional outside of oneself or others. In other words, her actions or behaviors cause me or others to be stressed, for example. Yeah, so I think I spoke to that a little bit back, but here, this is the actual external causality. So the cause of something lies outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves. This person makes me feel like this. This angry person makes me feel really upset. This person makes me really stressed. And of course, there are healthy boundaries to this, yeah, where sometimes if an environment is really violent, yeah, it's important to acknowledge that and recognize that. And then also the power sits within that to either stay in that environment or leave it or do something else about it. Yeah. So really withdrawing the power and the cause back into ourselves. Work can't make us stressed. Colleagues can't make us stressed. It's not possible. We are ourselves become stressed because of that. And we are creating that in our own self system. So this really has to do with health, responsibility, and power. No one or nothing can make you feel stressed or anxious or depressed or whatever it might be. Yeah. This lives inside of you. And then there's a whole field of biology and neurology that we can bring into this. But for now, if we look at the frames of mind and the emotional reality, how often do you or we actually talk ourselves into particular states that are not actually have anything to do with the external environment? You can particularly notice this very simply. If you're by yourself in the shower or cooking, there's no one or nothing else around, and you're stressed, well, okay, well, it looks like you're fine. So what's actually going on here? If there's an actual tiger sitting here or actually someone's shouting, and even then we have a choice. Even then we have a choice to perceive that or see that in a particular way. But most of us, most of the time, place the causality of our feelings outside of ourselves, which is incredibly disempowering. Yeah, a lot of power to be gained here, a lot of responsibility to be gained here, and insight to be gained here, that what we experience in our own self system is our experience, and we need to take responsibility for them. Or not, and stay victim. That's the other choice, really. So 8, projecting negative outcomes, future orientated, seeing problems as unending or permanent. Yeah, so sometimes we can see problems in reality. I actually had a realization a few years back, and then now it's really more landed more deeply in my own self system as I constantly work myself with these models and these frames, where it was really clear to me there are no problems. There are no problems. There are portals of potentiality or opportunities, really. Or we can just see reality as neutral, really, but because of that, it is an opportunity. But there really are no problems. And so like, okay, so the Second World War was not a problem. Well, no, if we look at it very truthfully, it wasn't really a problem. There's a lot to learn from it. There's a lot of opportunity that comes from it. Not saying it's a good moral thing that happened, but it's not a problem. Yeah. So there's a perfection in reality. There's a perfection in the world, and that's the level that we can really start to view from. And it's more of a fifth person, maybe sixth person perspective, where we really start to see there are no problems. Reality is perfect. It's all perfectly unfolding exactly how it needs to, including the wars, including whatever the government is doing, including the vaccines, including the whatever's going on, yeah, including the neighbor that's drunk or whatever's happening. So it's all perfect, and so you are perfect, and that becomes really clear when you really start to see this. And so you can relax in the moment. And what most of us do is we prepare mentally, we prepare for the next moment. So we are in preparation for the next moment, the next day, the next week, the next year, whatever it might be. But the next moment that's not here right now. So we're future oriented. And there can be a subtle layer of just suddenly preparing for that, even though right now everything is actually fine. Yeah, so we're projecting negative outcomes onto the future. And really what this has to do is a lot of basic trust and a lot of nervous system regulation is required for this also to really like be real and grounded. And most of us live actually in a constant state of fear. When you really start to work with this, you really start to see the magnificence and the impact of these frameworks and ideas on people's life. Most people live, generally speaking, most of the time in fear. because we've been conditioned to think that way. So play with it and see what happens. Or 9, personalizing. So perceiving, mind reading, others, realities, intent as targeted at self. Egocentric filtering, taking things personally. So the moment we take something personally, we make it about ourselves. Our partner is upset or tired, and we take it personal. Well, that's not very useful, not for them and not for you. The boss is a bit grumpy today, and we take it personal. We think it's about us. Most of the time, it is actually not about you or me or us. It's not actually about anyone. So yeah, we can filter egocentrically, so we can make it about us in our own mind. Oh, that's because of this, what I just said or what I just did. No, it's probably not. Yeah, and we really need to actually wake up to the fact that we're probably not as important as we make ourselves to be, but also not unimportant. Yeah, it's the two sides of the same coin. We're not more important than anyone else, but we're also not less important than anyone else. We're just equally here as we are. And in that, there's uniqueness and differentiation in our uniqueness. But when it comes to value, we're equally valuable. So we're all unique, but no one is special. And then judging, casting opinions, frames, shooting and musting, yeah, beliefs of right or wrong onto other people or ourselves. Yeah, so judging other people, their behaviors, the way they operate, the way they believe things, the way they see things, or judging ourselves into right and wrong categories. So there's a little bit of black and white thinking in here as well with the right and wrong. But you can hear it most when you say, oh, I should probably have done that, or I need to do that. It's a shooting quality, it's a musting quality. Yeah, I must do that in order to be X, Y, Z. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that's my fault. Those little things, they're little language things. That's my fault, that's your fault. Those little language things, that's really where we can start to see that someone's operating from a judging perspective in that moment, either themselves or others. And most likely both. When we're judging ourselves, we're judging others. When we're judging others, we're judging ourselves, because that's coming back to the shadow integration. Point 5. It's really the same stuff, really. Yeah. So this is important distortion. We can also simply perceive reality as it is without any right or wrong about it, and simply see it as it is. That is a possibility. And then separating, this is a big one. So in a lot of spiritual traditions and religions, it's actually one of the marks of enlightenment, when we start to really not objectifies and separate ourselves from reality, or objectifies others into that. So form of separation is objectifying others, reality events, and subjectifying self, comparing and splitting. So we compare and split in our own mind and with others. An objectification there, another objectification. Actually, everything is arising in our side of our awareness. Everything is arising inside of you. There's nothing outside of you. Everything is inside of you. Nature, the trees, this voice speaking, the car just passed by, your mom, your dad, your children. It's all happening inside of your awareness. There's nothing outside of you. And so this is a very big realization, because we're constantly comparing and splitting. The mind is constantly splitting and comparing ourselves to others, and splitting in our own self, different parts. The moment we see something as an object, there has to be a subject that is perceiving that. And the real question is, who or what is seeing this? Who or what in your location is perceiving it this way? Who or what is that? This is quite, maybe you understand it on a certain level, but to really embody this and then disembody it, because it's just true, And to really live this and be this, yeah, it requires a lot of self-work. I'm not there yet. This is real. This is like enlightenment, this state, to have without separation. Really seeing an experience as if everything is arising within you. And into today's world, there's so much to include. There's planes, there's social media, there's AI, there's TikTok, there's all sorts of things going on. And all of that is arising within us. That's a lot. Yeah, so to not objectify anything and allow everything to sit within our awareness. Yeah. And what it requires is a real cleaning away of everything that we take ourselves to be that we're actually not. Yeah. I hope it was useful. So I'm gonna upload some more videos like this on here and see what the perspectives are. So share any insights, share any realizations, make notes as you go through the exercise. Come back to this video if you want to learn a bit more, and share this channel with other people if you think it is useful for you and other people to get more insight into these kind of frameworks and understandings of both themselves and others, so that ultimately with the united intention, so that we have more cohesion, more harmony, both in our own self system and then in the world at large. We understand each other better, we communicate better, and there's simply less friction and more harmony and love, really. And so if this was useful, share it with someone that you like or enjoy to share this with. And I'm going to upload some more videos on here soon. We also have a conscious leadership framework that we're running, Dan and myself, with our organization called Yes And. I'll pop the link below, and we talk about all these kind of things. So if you're interested in that, please join, and have a beautiful rest of your day or morning or week or whatever it is for you, and see you soon.